Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Jared Goff. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Raymond Allan Hembrow. Raymond Hembrow was born on the 27th of June 1920 in Roma, Queensland. Known as Ray, he was one of 4 children born to local farmer Harry Hembrow and his wife Lizzie. Ray grew up on his father's property, Sunnyside Farm, in the small town of Wallumbilla. He attended the local state school, where he was a keen student who excelled in his studies. On completion of his education, Ray moved to far north Queensland, settling in the community of Alligator Creek outside Townsville. At the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, he was working as a labourer. Ray Hembrow enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 22nd of May 1941. After a short period of training at Red Bank Camp just outside of Brisbane, in mid-July, Private Hembrow was granted 3 days of leave to visit his family in Queensland. On his return, he travelled to Bathurst in New South Wales, where he joined the ranks of the 2nd 26th Infantry Battalion. From Bathurst, Hembrow travelled to Melbourne, where he embarked for active service on the 30th of July 1941, sailing on board the troopship Mane van St. Elagonda. Private Hembrow arrived in Singapore on the 15th of August 1941 and proceeded to his battalion's camp near Changi on the northeastern tip of the island. About a month after his arrival in Singapore, Hembrow contracted mumps and was sent to hospital. He rejoined his unit in mid-October on the Malayan Peninsula, where the men were training and preparing defences in anticipation of war with Japan. Split across the island, Hembrow's unit saw little action for the remainder of 1941. In January the following year, it moved to Johor on the western side of the Malayan Peninsula before being deployed to the Segamat sector, where it fought alongside British and Indian troops. Hembrow's unit was later deployed to a frontline position at Gemmas, where it successfully ambushed the enemy on the 14th of January. As the Japanese continued to victoriously sweep through the Pacific, the 2nd 26th Battalion was forced to begin a fighting withdrawal. By the end of January 1942, it had crossed onto Singapore Island. On the 8th of February, Japanese units began landing on the northwest of the island and Singapore came under attack. Fierce fighting ensued as Allied troops fought to maintain control of their positions. By the 13th of February, Hembrow's unit was in position around Farrer Road, just outside Singapore City. There it came under attack over several hours. Between 8 p.m. and midnight on the 14th of February 1942, Hembrow's unit was engaged in a number of clashes with the enemy, sustaining many casualties. Scattered fighting continued until the following day, when Singapore was surrendered to the Japanese. With this, thousands of Allied soldiers became prisoners of war. Hembrow's commanding officer later recorded in the unit's war diaries, "We heard the Japanese cheering in their lines, a bitter pill to we Australians, and it is hard to realise that this war is over." After the fall of Singapore, Private Hembrow was listed as missing. His fate remained unknown until after the war's end. In 1945, as the rest of the world celebrated peace, Private Hembrow's parents, Harry and Lizzie, received a letter from the Army Records section which read, "It is with very deep regret that I have to inform you on behalf of the Minister for Army that as a result of investigations carried out by Army Headquarters following the cessation of hostilities, it is now definitely established that your son was killed in action on the 14th of February 1942 during operations in Malaya. Though the exact fate is unknown, it is likely that Private Hembrow was killed in action during the fighting around Farrer Road before the fall of Singapore. His final resting place was later uncovered, and today his remains lie at Kranji War Cemetery in Singapore beneath a simple inscription, "Peacefully Sleeping." Private Raymond Hembrow was 21 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Raymond Hembrow, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.